The rain was coming down hard that night in Lagos, turning the streets into silver rivers under the dim streetlight. Amelie pulled her shawl tighter as she hurried home, her shoes splashing through puddles. It had been another long day, 2 jobs back to back, exhaustion weighing on her shoulders. But she smiled softly at the thought of Biko, her big brown Borbal, who always ran to the gate when she came home. He was the one constant in her life since her parents died, her comfort, her family. When she reached the gate, the yard was quiet. Too quiet. Usually, Biko barked the moment he heard her footsteps. She frowned, calling out, "Biko, boy, where are you?" Only the rain answered. Her heart sank a little as she pushed open the door to the house. Inside, her aunt and 2 cousins were watching TV, eating jollof rice, and laughing like nothing was wrong. "Where's Biko?" Amelie asked, her voice already tight with worry. Her aunt didn't even look up. "Oh, that dog? We sold him this afternoon," she said casually, scooping another spoonful of rice into her mouth. Amelie froze. You did what?" "He was just eating too much," her aunt continued, waving her hand dismissively. "We needed money for the electricity bill anyway. You should be thankful." The words hit Amelie like a slap. She couldn't speak. Her throat felt like it was closing. Slowly, she stepped outside again, her eyes landing on Biko's empty food bowl lying on the porch. Rainwater had filled it halfway. Her hands trembled. Her heart broke. And in that moment, something inside her shifted, a quiet rage replacing every tear. She whispered under her breath, "You'll regret this." That night, Amelie sat on her bed with her phone in her hands, the room dim except for the flicker of her small lamp. The sound of the rain outside had softened, but inside, her heart still felt like a storm. She kept staring at the corner of the room where Biko's leash used to hang. The house felt painfully quiet without the sound of his paws or his gentle snoring. Tears slipped down her cheeks as she opened her phone, searching through local pet ads. She told herself it was useless, but she couldn't stop. Her fingers trembled as she scrolled past photos of dogs, some small, some big, until her heart nearly stopped. There he was, Biko. She recognized him instantly, the small scar on his ear, the same deep brown eyes, even the red collar she had bought last Christmas. The ad read, "Purebred African Borbal for sale. Recently vaccinated, very loyal and well-trained." Her stomach twisted. Her aunt had sold him. Just like that, as if he meant nothing. Without thinking, Amelie pressed the number on the ad. A man picked up after a few rings. "Hello, I'm calling about the dog," she said, trying to keep her voice steady. "Yes," the man said cheerfully. "Strong dog, very obedient. The owner sold him to me this morning, but he's already been reserved by another buyer." Amelie's heart sank deeper. "Can I ask where you're located?" she whispered. "Surulere, Lagos," he replied. "But it doesn't matter now. The buyer is taking him tonight." She wanted to scream, to beg him to stop the sale, to say, "That's my dog." But instead, she forced herself to thank him and hung up. She sat there for a long moment, staring at the phone screen, her hands shaking. Then she broke down completely. Amelie cried until her chest hurt. Not just because of Biko, but because of everything. All the years she spent cleaning, cooking, and taking care of her aunts. Amelie sat in silence long after the phone call ended. Her eyes were red and swollen, but she couldn't cry anymore. She felt completely hollow. The sound of laughter came faintly from the living room. Her aunt and cousins were watching TV, probably eating the snacks she had bought with her own money. Every giggle felt like a knife. They didn't even feel sorry for what they'd done. As she stared at the wall, her eyes landed on the small wooden box tucked deep under her old bookshelf. For years, she hadn't touched it. It was dusty, almost forgotten, but suddenly it felt like it was calling her. She got up slowly, her knees weak, and pulled it out. Inside were a few photos of her parents, a silver necklace, and a thick brown envelope. Her hands trembled as she opened the envelope. The papers inside were yellowing slightly at the edges, but the ink was still clear. At the top, in bold print, were the words, "Certificate of Land and Property Ownership." And under that, her name, Amelie Cube. Her breath caught in her throat. Her father's signature was neatly written at the bottom, dated 3 months before his death. She could still remember that week, how he had called her into his hospital room and told her softly, "You are my heart, Amelie. No matter what happens, this house is yours. Promise me you'll protect it." Back then, she hadn't understood why he said it with such urgency. She thought he was just worried about her future. But now it all made sense. He must have known how his sister, Amelie's aunt, could be. Greedy, controlling, cold. For years, Amelie had stayed quiet about the papers. She thought keeping peace was better than causing fights. She wanted to believe her family still cared for her. So she worked hard, paid bills, cleaned the house, and even helped her cousins with school. All while sleeping under the same roof her father had built. The same roof that now technically belonged to her. But tonight, everything inside her changed. They had sold Biko, the one creature who loved her unconditionally. The only thing she had left from her parents' warmth. And they didn't even ask. They didn't even care. She held the papers close to her chest, her tears falling onto the edge of the page. "You took him from me," she whispered into the quiet room. Then her tone hardened, her voice trembling with determination. "Now I'll take everything." She carefully placed the documents back in the envelope, but this time she didn't hide them away. She set them on her bedside table, right where she could see them. The rain had stopped outside, and a strange calm filled the air. For the first time in years, Amelie felt power stir inside her, not loud but steady and certain. Her father had left her the keys to everything, and tomorrow she would finally use them. The next morning, sunlight slipped through the thin curtains, filling the small kitchen with a warm glow. Amelie could hear laughter before she even stepped out of her room. Her aunt's loud voice carried through the house, mixed with the cheerful chatter of her cousins. For a second, Amelie almost forgot everything that had happened, but then she heard her cousin say it. "I told you selling that dog was worth it," the girl said between bites of bread. "Now at least we could pay off the Wi-Fi and data bundle." Her aunt chuckled, stirring her tea. "That mutt was just a burden, eating like a king while the rest of us struggled. I did what had to be done." Amelie froze in the hallway, her heart clenching. The casual tone, the laughter, it was like Biko's life meant nothing. She wanted to scream, to tell them how cruel they were, but instead she took a deep breath and stepped into the kitchen with a calm face. "Morning," she said softly, heading straight to the cupboard for a mug. Her aunt barely looked at her. "Morning, Amelie. Tea's on the stove." "Oh, and you'll have to start paying a little more this month. Prices are going up." Amelie stirred her tea quietly. "Of course," she replied. Her voice was steady, polite. She didn't argue, didn't frown, just smiled faintly. It was the kind of calm that hides a storm behind it. Her cousins went back to laughing about social media and how some rich guy bought the dog. They didn't notice the way Amelie's hands stayed perfectly still on the table, or how her eyes lingered on each of them for a second too long. After breakfast, she packed her small black bag for work, slipping the brown envelope carefully inside. The same one she had pulled out last night, her father's property papers. She wore a simple cream blouse and navy skirt, tying her hair neatly. On the outside, she looked like the same Amelie who had always taken care of everyone. But inside, something had shifted. As she walked out the front door, the air felt different, heavier but clearer. Her aunt called after her. "Don't forget to bring bread when you come home." Amelie turned slightly, smiled, and said, "Sure, Auntie. I won't forget." But this time, she meant something else entirely. At the corner of the street, near the small kiosk that sold pap and fruit, a tall man in a gray shirt waited beside his motorbike. Mr. Lunga, the property manager. He looked surprised to see her so early. "Morning, Amelie. You said it was urgent?" "Yes," she said, handing him the sealed envelope. "Everything's in there. The ownership transfer is official. All the documents are signed." He looked at her for a moment, his expression turning serious. "So, you're ready to proceed?" Amelie nodded slowly. "Yes. Make sure the lease is updated by tomorrow. I'll take full control of the property." Mr. Lunga gave a respectful nod. "Consider it done." As he mounted his motorbike and drove off, Amelie stood there for a moment, watching the clouds move across the Lagos sky. The wind brushed against her face, carrying the faint scent of rain and dust. She felt a quiet satisfaction rise within her. Not joy, not revenge yet, but a steady sense of justice beginning to form. By the time she turned back toward the house, she wasn't just Amelie, the quiet niece anymore. She was the rightful owner. And though her family didn't know it yet, by tomorrow, everything in that house would change forever. The next morning began like any other. The smell of fried eggs and bread filled the small house as Amelie's aunt hummed an old song from the kitchen. Her cousins scrolled on their phones, laughing at videos, completely unaware that their lives were about to change. Then came the knock at the door. It wasn't loud, just a firm, official-sounding knock that made everyone glance up. One of the cousins got up lazily to open it. A man in a blue uniform stood outside, holding a white envelope stamped with the landlord's office seal. "Delivery for Mrs. Nkube," he said, handing it over before walking away. Her aunt wiped her hands on her wrapper and opened the envelope with a frown. The paper inside looked formal, the kind of letter that carried bad news. As she read it, her face slowly lost its color. "What's wrong, Auntie?" one cousin asked, sipping her tea. Her aunt didn't answer right away. Her lips trembled as she read the words again, whispering them out loud like she couldn't believe it. "Your rental agreement has been terminated. New owner requests property clearance within 14 days. "What does that even mean?" the younger cousin asked. "It means we're being kicked out," her aunt snapped, her voice suddenly shaky. She grabbed her phone and started dialing frantically. "I'll call Mr. Lunga. This must be a mistake." Amelie sat quietly in the corner, pretending to scroll on her own phone. Inside, her heart beat fast, but her face stayed calm. Her aunt finally got through to the landlord. "Hello. Mr. Lunga, what's going on? I got a letter saying we have to leave this house." "You can't do that to us. There was a pause on the other end, then a calm voice replied, "Madam, it's no longer my property. Ownership has officially transferred." Her aunt frowned. "Transferred to who?" "To Ameline Cube," the man said simply. "She's the new owner now." The phone slipped from her aunt's hand and hit the floor. The cousins stared at each other in shock, as if someone had just dropped a bomb in the middle of the room. "Wait, what did he say?" one of them whispered. Her aunt slowly turned her head toward Amelie, her face pale and confused. "He said you," she said softly. "You own this house now?" Amelie finally stood up, her movements calm and deliberate. She reached into her bag and pulled out a small leather collar, Biko's collar, the one with his name still engraved on. She held it tightly in her hand, her voice steady but cold. "Yes," she said. "You sold what I loved most. Now I own what you love most." The room went completely silent. You could hear the ceiling fan spinning and the rain starting again outside, tapping softly against the windows. Her aunt's mouth opened, but no words came out. The cousins just stared, eyes wide, faces pale. The laughter that once filled the kitchen had vanished. All that was left was the weight of guilt and disbelief hanging in the air. Amelie didn't shout. She didn't gloat. She simply looked at them, the same people who had treated her like a servant in her own home. And for the first time, she saw fear in their eyes. She placed Biko's collar gently on the table, looked at her aunt one last time, and said quietly, "You have 14 days. Don't waste them." Then she turned and walked away, leaving the echo of her footsteps and the sound of rain behind her. By the next morning, the whole house felt different. The air was thick and heavy, filled with tension and fear. No one laughed at breakfast anymore. The same people who used to boss Amelie around now spoke softly, watching her every move as if she were a stranger. Her aunt waited until the cousins had left for the market before approaching her. "Amelie," she began, her voice trembling slightly, "we need to talk." Amelie didn't look up from her tea. "About what?" she said quietly. "You can't really mean to throw your family out," her aunt said, forcing a sad smile. "We've lived here for years. This is our home." Amelie took a slow sip of her tea before replying. "You mean my home?" Her aunt's smile faded. "We didn't know about your father's papers. If we had known, you still would have sold my dog," Amelie interrupted. Her tone was calm, but every word cut deep. Her aunt sighed heavily, rubbing her hands together. "Amelie, we made a mistake. We didn't mean harm. You know times have been hard. We just thought. You thought it was fine to take what wasn't yours," Amelie said, standing there. "You thought I'd stay quiet like always." At that moment, her oldest cousin came in, tears already streaming down her face. "Amelie, please," she cried, rushing toward her. "We're sorry. I swear we didn't mean it that way. We thought maybe someone would take care of Biko better. That's all." Amelie stared at her, disbelief on her face. "Take care of him better? You sold him to strangers like a piece of furniture." The cousin broke down completely, falling to her knees. "Please, don't make us leave. We have nowhere to go." The sight might have softened her once, but not anymore. Amelie's voice stayed cold. "I had nowhere to go either when you treated me like a burden. Remember that." Her aunt's expression hardened suddenly. The begging stopped, replaced with anger and bitterness. "You think your father would be proud of this?" she snapped. "He raised you better than this, Amelie. He'd be ashamed to see his daughter turning against her own blood." Amelie froze for a moment. Then she looked her aunt straight in the eye and said in a low, steady voice, "No, Auntie. He'd be ashamed of what you became." Silence fell, the kind that makes every heartbeat sound louder. Her aunt's eyes filled with tears, but they weren't of guilt, they were of defeat. The cousins whispered to each other in the corner, scared and lost. The house, once filled with noise and chaos, now felt like a battlefield, one side desperate and broken, the other calm and unshaken. Amelie walked to the window, watching the dark clouds gather outside. Rain began to fall again, soft and steady, like the world was washing everything clean. Without turning back, she said quietly, "You have 12 days left. Use them to remember what you did." Her aunt tried to speak again, but Amelie walked away before she could. The sound of her footsteps echoed through the hallway, strong, steady, final. For the first time, her aunt and cousins realized the truth. The girl they used to look down on wasn't powerless anymore, and nothing they said could change what was coming. The 14th day came faster than anyone expected. The morning was quiet, almost too quiet. The sound of birds outside felt out of place against the heavy tension in the air. Amelie stood by the window, sipping her coffee as the moving truck pulled up to the gate. Her aunt and cousins were already outside, surrounded by boxes piled high, clothes, furniture, everything they once called theirs. The movers moved quickly, working in silence. No one dared to speak much. Her aunt tried to give orders at first, but her voice trembled. She wasn't in charge anymore, and everyone knew it. Amelie stepped outside slowly, her calm presence making the air feel colder. She didn't say anything. She didn't need to. Her eyes spoke louder than words ever could. The same people who once made her feel small now avoided her gaze, ashamed, defeated, broken. Her cousin, the youngest one, cried openly. "Emily, please," she whispered, clutching a box of family photos. "Can't we just stay until next week? We don't have anywhere to go." Emily looked at her for a long moment before replying softly. "I gave you 2 weeks. I think that's fair." Her aunt, standing nearby, suddenly snapped. "You're heartless," she spat, tears mixing with anger. "We took you in when your parents died. We gave you a home, food, everything. And this is how you repay us." Emily turned toward her slowly, her face calm but her eyes sharp. "You didn't take me in, Auntie," she said quietly. "You took over what was already mine." The aunt froze, her mouth opening but no words coming out. For a brief second, she looked smaller than Emily had ever seen her, like all the pride and power she carried for years had finally crumbled. The movers lifted the last of the boxes onto the truck. One of them nodded politely to Emily. "We're done here, ma'am." "Thank you," she said simply. Her aunt muttered something under her breath, curses, sharp and bitter, meant to sting. But Emily didn't react. She just stood there, arms folded, watching as the truck started to move. The rumble of the engine echoed down the street, and with every turn of the wheels, the weight in her chest felt a little lighter. When the truck finally disappeared down the road, Emily stood there alone in front of the house. The silence was deafening. For a moment, she just looked around. The empty porch, the quiet garden, the door she'd walked through 1,000 times. Then she slowly walked to the corner of the porch where Biko's food bowl used to sit. Kneeling down, she pulled his old collar from her pocket. It was worn and scratched, but it still smelled faintly like him. Her hands shook as she held it close to her heart. Her eyes filled with tears, but this time they weren't from pain. They were from closure, from justice. She whispered softly, "This was for you, Biko." The wind picked up slightly, brushing through her hair as if answering her. She smiled faintly, standing up and taking one last look at the road her family had gone down. The house was quiet again, but it didn't feel empty anymore. It felt hers. Completely hers. The days that followed felt different. For the first time in years, Emily woke up in a quiet house. No shouting, no insults, no one ordering her around. Just peace. The morning light came through the window, and she stood in the middle of her living room, taking a deep breath. The air smelled like fresh paint and new beginnings. She had spent weeks transforming the house. The cracked walls were now covered in soft shades of cream and gold. The floors shined again after years of being hidden under dust and neglect. She replaced the old furniture, hung new curtains, and added small plants in every corner. Each change felt like she was reclaiming a piece of herself that had been buried. The house no longer felt like a reminder of pain. It felt like a promise of better days. One evening, while scrolling through her phone, she saw an ad from a local animal shelter. They were looking for volunteers. Without thinking too much, she sent a message offering to help. The next morning, she walked into the shelter and was instantly greeted by barks and wagging tails. The warmth she felt was indescribable. She spent hours cleaning kennels, feeding the dogs, and talking to them like they were old friends. The workers there quickly grew fond of her. One day, the shelter manager brought out a tiny puppy, brown fur, big eyes, trembling a little. "Someone abandoned her at the gate," the manager said softly. "She's been scared ever since." Emily knelt down and extended her hand. The puppy sniffed it carefully, then crawled into her lap. Something inside Emily melted. It wasn't Biko, but there was a spark, a small heartbeat that reminded her of love, not loss. She named the puppy Lulu, meaning precious pearl. Taking Lulu home filled the house with laughter again. The little dog followed her everywhere, while she cooked, painted, or worked in the garden. Sometimes, Emily would sit on the porch at sunset, watching Lulu chase her tail and whisper, "You would have loved her, Biko." But Emily didn't stop there. Her love for animals turned into something bigger. She started creating homemade pet care products, shampoos, collars, treats, and even cozy beds. Friends from the shelter began buying them, and soon, strangers online started placing orders. She decided to name her brand Biko's Haven. The logo was simple, a small paw print inside a heart. Every product she made carried a message of love, care, and second chances. What started as a small project in her kitchen slowly grew into a thriving business. Months later, Emily stood in front of her renovated home, watching a delivery truck labeled Biko's Haven drive away. She smiled with pride. The woman who was once broken now built something from that pain, something meaningful. She looked down at Lulu resting by her feet and whispered, "We made it, little one." The wind carried her words softly, as if Biko himself was listening, proud, at peace, and watching over her new beginning. Months passed, and Emily's life had completely changed. Her small business, Biko's Haven, was growing fast. People from all over Lagos ordered her pet products, and her shelter work earned her respect in the community. She felt lighter, happier, and stronger than ever before. Lulu, her little dog, had become her constant companion, always by her side, full of joy and energy. For the first time in a long while, Amelie felt peace. One cloudy afternoon, while she was restocking shelves at the shelter, she heard a familiar voice at the front desk. It was soft, shaky, and filled with embarrassment. When she looked up, her heart almost stopped. It was her aunt. The same woman who had laughed when she cried for Biko. The same woman who sold her only companion for a few bills. Her aunt looked completely different now. Her clothes were wrinkled, her hair messy, and her eyes carried a tired sadness. She held her bag close, as if afraid someone might take it away too. "Amelie," she began hesitantly, "I heard you work here now, and I didn't know where else to go. My apartment flooded last week. Everything's ruined. I have nowhere to stay." For a long moment, Amelie said nothing. The room felt heavy. She could see the desperation in her aunt's face. The same woman who once called her weak was now standing before her, broken and lost. Amelie slowly walked over to the small kitchenette, poured a glass of water, and handed it to her. "Sit," she said quietly. Her aunt sat down, her hands trembling as she took the glass. Amelie stood across from her, calm and collected. "It's strange, isn't it?" she said softly. "How things change. I used to come home to you, asking for kindness. You gave me cruelty. I begged you to understand love, but you only saw weakness." Her aunt's eyes filled with tears. "Amelie, I'm sorry," she whispered. "I didn't know it would come to this. Please, I just need a few days until I find a place." Amelie took a deep breath. Lulu walked up beside her, barking once as if sensing her emotions. She looked at her aunt and said gently, "I can offer you water and a seat, but not a home. I can't house people who throw away love." The words hit hard, not shouted, not cruel, just honest. Her aunt looked down, tears falling silently onto her. She knew Amelie wasn't being spiteful. She was speaking truth. After a few minutes, her aunt stood up, wiping her face. "You've changed," she murmured, her voice trembling. Amelie gave a small smile. "No," she said. "I just stopped letting people break me." Her aunt walked out of the shelter quietly, the sound of her footsteps fading in the distance. Amelie watched her leave, a mix of sadness and closure washing over her. As Lulu jumped into her lap, Amelie whispered, "Some people only understand love after losing it." She stroked Lulu's fur and looked out the window. The rain had started again, but this time it felt cleansing, not painful. For the first time, she didn't feel anger. Just peace, the kind that comes when life finally sets things right. The sun was setting behind the trees, painting the sky with shades of gold and orange. Amelie walked slowly through her garden, Lulu trotting beside her, tail wagging happily. The air was calm, filled with the soft hum of evening crickets and the gentle rustle of leaves. For the first time in years, her home felt truly peaceful. Flowers bloomed along the path, and the house she once shared with pain now stood tall, filled with warmth and Amelie paused near the small wooden bench under the mango tree, the same place she used to sit with Biko. She looked up at the sky, her eyes glistening but not from sadness. Lulu climbed onto her lap, licking her hand, as if sensing the moment. Amelie smiled softly and whispered, "You'd like her, Biko. She's just as loyal as you were." As she walked back inside, her voice played in the background, calm and steady. "They thought I was weak because I loved deeply. But love is power, and it remembers." Inside her living room, everything told her story, not of revenge, but of resilience. On one wall hung her late father's photo, smiling proudly in his favorite suit. Just below it, in a glass frame, rested Biko's worn-out collar. The sight brought peace, not pain. Amelie stopped in front of it and whispered, "We did it, Papa. We're finally free." The camera would slowly pull back, showing her standing there, calm, strong, and whole again, before fading to black with her final words echoing. "Never mistake kindness for weakness. One day, the tables will turn." It wasn't just an ending. It was a reminder that even the softest hearts can roar when pushed too far.